going to just kick off
Great.
I'm going to get into podcast mode now. So I want to first just say thank you so much for being here on sort of what might be the inaugural episode of Who Gets the China podcast, where my goal is to help connect people who are caring for aging parents and have some just really funny, honest, and helpful conversations about navigating life with older parents. And so I'm so excited to have you here today as our very first expert. So, for those of you who don't know Colleen, she is a licensed clinical social worker and she works with couples, families, and individuals. And the reason why I invited her to be here today is because she has an expertise working with families where somebody is experiencing cognitive decline or struggling with late in life transitions. And I think that is at the root of a lot of the things that we're dealing with right now. And so I wanted to bring her expertise to the table so we can have a conversation about how to navigate some of these trials and tribulations and also share some of the silly comedic moments that come up while we're doing this. So, Colleen, thank you for taking time to be here with us today.
So happy to be here with you.
So, I was laughing the other day because somebody said to me, "Why did you pick the name Who Gets the China?" And I was in a conversation with some other people, and somebody chimed in and she said, "Well, yeah, it's perfect because honestly, it's like a riff on who wants the China, right? Like, who wants this stuff?" And so it's like, you get it. You totally get it, right? It's this combination of, on the one hand, who gets the stuff that our parents have been holding on to and saving all their lives? But then on the other hand, like, who wants it even? As we navigate this. And, my mom is constantly cutting out articles out of the Wall Street Journal, like, look, here's another article about how kids don't want any of their parents' stuff, um,
Yes.
which is heartbreaking for her, but
Yeah.
hits for me. And so when I go there and I try to like help my mom, what I think is being helpful, like I hear her on the phone with her best friend, like, "Oh my God, Kirsten's here again. She's doing another Swedish death cleaning with me. Why doesn't she just let it go?" Right. And in my mind, I'm like, "But you need my help, mom, because your life is going to be better. Also, my life is going to be better someday if some of the stuff is pared down." So this is just like we all share the funny stories about like trying to help our parents get rid of stuff. And then like, what do we do with it? I was over at my friend Andy's house the other day and she has literally three sets of china from all the different family members, but like she feels too guilty to sort of give it away, right? Because our parents want to feel like they're giving us something that has meaning and value. Why do we feel need to declutter and downsize as the kids? And why do our parents not seem to share that at all?
So it's funny that you should say that because the first thing that came to mind is your mom's on the phone with her best friend and she's saying Kirsten's here doing a Swedish death clean and she's trying to get rid of these really important things that I've collected over the years, the dolls, the champagne flutes, and you're texting me going, "Oh my God, my mother won't let go of these things. I don't understand what's going on. This is driving me insane." That's changed a lot in the last year. I
It's
just
a
want you to
parallel
know that.
universe.
It's a parallel universe. So, and I think the first thing that comes to mind is the reality of the fact that as children or as younger siblings or as nieces, nephews, whatever, you're saying, "Oh my gosh, there's so much to do here." As this person transitions into the next phase of their life. And for somebody who's been the daughter or the child of somebody who collects things, it feels like a mountain of tasks and things to do and appointments to make and assessments to do. And so there's that part that feels very heavy. And then there's also the part of like, how do I talk to you about downsizing? How do I meet you where you're at about the fact that things will change? And we do need to get ahead of this while you can make decisions and we're not making decisions for you.
Also, the other thing that I'm struck with is it's not only about downsizing, it's
Hmm.
also about making your life easier
Yes.
now in this
Yes.
moment. Like I saw a thing on TikTok about how you could take old teacups and turn them into bird feeders. Like you just turn the cup on the side and you glue it and you put a little metal chain. I was like, "Oh my God, this is genius," right? We have this whole collection of China teacups. So I sent it to my mom, like, this would be great. You could take something that's just collecting dust, turn it into something beautiful that we could, she like looked at me with my dad was there. She obviously already told my dad, like, get a load of the last thing that Kirsten sent us because my dad rolled his eyes. He was like, she's never gonna do that. I was like, what? Why? And she's like, well, birds, they're gonna like destroy it. And, shit all over my beautiful teacups, and I hadn't thought about that at all. But in my mind, I'm like, let's just make your day-to-day life. I'm not saying you have to get rid of them. I'm saying they're in your way right now when you're trying to find something or do something.
Yeah,
But I don't know how to make it clear to my mom, like, I'm trying to help you live an easier life, even if you stay in this house for the next 10 years.
right,
But
right.
she doesn't see it that way.
I always take into consideration like who the person is and why it would be so important for them to have the things that they do. And some of the things that you've told me about your mom and your dad is that they have created the life that they have. So they're sort of living their ancestors' dreams of having this beautiful home and having the right china for the right occasion and things like that. And so it's like these things mean something to them. And it
Hmm.
means accomplishment and it means memories. And it means so much that to take some of these things away, or even any of these things away, feels like you're erasing time or you're erasing memories. And we know that the memory is in the oral and the written versus the object, but they don't know that so much right now because it feels like that's what they have to attach themselves to a memory or a
Right. And
time.
that's the visual cue, right? Like,
Hmm.
my mom has this nice hutch in their kitchen where it has all kinds of beautiful things in there. I mean, just like dolls from my great grandmothers and, like old teacups. And I mean, some of this stuff means something. I don't know. Some of it might not mean anything. I don't know anymore. But like for them, that visual cue is that nice reminder. And I guess what I think is like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right,
That's totally fine and great. But it's the things that don't seem to have meaning that you still really struggle with getting rid of.
yeah,
That is crazy making for me as the child because I look around and it's like, oh my God. I mean, like the ladder, right? Like this wooden
right,
rickety ladder that my dad insists on climbing up on to change light bulbs. Like, this isn't a good idea.
right,
Why can't we get rid of this? But
right.
yet they just like hold on to it.
And it's such an interesting thing that you just said because I've seen a picture of that ladder. And I think that, like, the first thing I want to do is go get them one of those really nice, neatly folding, super sturdy, little kitchen ladders that everybody has. And thinking that it's dangerous, but it's like, there's that other thing of like, well, why would I get something else? I already have something for
Right.
that job. And so
Right.
that seems completely ridiculous to collect something else when you're really thinking like this is about safety. And
Right.
so there's safety concerns that come along with these sorts of things too. And sometimes they don't want to hear that because they think they're steady on their feet. They think they're okay.
Right.
I can climb a step ladder. I've been doing this my whole life. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, now
Why are
you're
you so
90.
worried? I know. I think as the children, we can do a better job having productive conversations about this, right? And I'm
Mhm.
totally guilty of um not being understanding enough, right? Just getting frustrated. Like, oh my God, we got to get rid of some stuff. Why are we having the fifth conversation about this set of table and chairs in the garage that nobody has ever used, or not ever, not used in 20 years? And I
Mhm.
think I told you, like, I got the veterans truck to come to the house. And so I was like, okay, mom, let's pack up some bigger items that the veterans truck can take. And my mom was like, well, I'm not ready to get rid of that, like basically a card table and chairs in the garage, like that is covered with stuff. And I mean, in my mind, like this, why are we holding on to this? Like, oh my God, we haven't used it well, if we have a party, we're going to need extra seating, so I don't want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
What I expressed was frustration. Like, that's ridiculous. Upon reflection, and I think you helped me achieve this reflection, which was like she's hoping there might be a time when we would need that again, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
then I feel kind of like a jerk for saying it that way. But I
Yeah.
think like talk a little bit about that, sort of reframing the way you navigate those conversations.
I think that like in situations like this, she has a there's you got to sort of like look through what she's saying and doing to what she sort of is feeling emotionally and what she's needing. And so what I hear her needing in this situation is she needs to gather everybody together, all of you kids and your children and your spouses and friends that are close by, and have those times like Christmases or Easters or Mother's Day or somebody's birthday, or just because. And she wants that kind of stuff,
Right.
but it's not happening anymore. And
Right.
so it's not happening anymore. But to translate it into something like, hey mom, I understand that you've kept these things around in the event that we have something going on. And we don't do that as much anymore. And if we did, we could always rent some things. We could always get some additional seating. And so then we can create some space for you guys in the house. But it's like, it's really meeting that need that's underneath all of this stuff of like the clutter and the extra table. It's really about, I miss the times when we had all these people over.
Right.
I want to have the ability to host. Your mother has this like host thing.
Yes, she does like to host.
Yeah, and she's keeping all those items to maintain her ability to host.
Yes, she is. 100% she is. In the
Yeah,
event that we have to host, we have two blenders and
that's right.
two crock pots and other varieties of things. We have plenty of extras. So
Well,
I
yeah,
have
because you
managed to
don't
get
know
rid
if
of
you're
some
going
of
to
that.
have like daiquiris and margaritas and you want to be able to do both and you want to have you want to have several soups going at once. I mean, it's just sort of like, but it's like it just does harken back to what they did before and what you guys experienced when you were kids.
Yeah.
She's still thinking that way. This is it feels similar, but it's not about elderly, it's about me. I came from a huge family. My mother, I think I have 28 cousins on my mom's side. She was one of seven children. And it took me about 15 years to realize that we were going to have small Thanksgivings. We wouldn't need two turkeys. Like my
Yeah.
my husband would say, Colleen, we're small. The most people we're going to have around the table is 10. Like you
Right.
need to
It's a
like
different thing.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
had to mourn that. Like I really had to mourn that. Like it was like a big deal that I liked. We had two seatings at the
Yeah.
McIntyre Thanksgivings. And mostly that's because they wanted to feed the kids and get them out of the house and then the
Smart.
adults could eat.
Yeah. Smart.
But can't you just see all the stuff that my Aunt Barbara had at her house? It's the same thing as your mom.
Yeah.
It's like, and then but it was my nostalgia that
Right.
got in there.
Right.
So I kind of relate to your mom a little bit in that,
Yeah.
like, but what if we have I have a lot of buffet plates, just in case you're wondering if you need them.
I can always borrow them. I can bring them out to
You can.
California. So, like, I think what I say to my mom is, why, oh my God, mom, why can't we get rid of this? Like, please let me get rid of this. I mean, and again, a lot of the stuff does not, in my mind, have meaning, right? It's just
Right,
stuff that got moved from Connecticut to California and
right,
it just has lingered. Um, so I think you were talking about saying, like, don't ask about why won't you get rid of it, but
right.
asking about like the what. Say what you mean when you say, don't talk about the why, talk about the what. Like, how do I use that in this challenge?
Well, in situations like this, if we ask why automatically brings up a defensive mode, especially in something like this. We can find ourselves being defensive when we're asked why in lots of different situations where we wouldn't normally be defensive. So if we ask, like, take the I briefly remember you talking to her about these champagne flutes that
Right.
she had, and you were like, "Why do you keep these? What's going on?" Like I don't understand why. How often are you having champagne? It doesn't make any sense to me. When really, if you said, "Mom, I don't think I've ever known what these champagne flutes mean to you or where they came from. When did you get them? Tell me a story." And I think that what you may find in often is that there's certain items that carry such strong memory that it's really about the memory, it's not really about the item. And it's just one more time to share that story and to be heard and to be seen instead of being feeling like her needs and wants are frivolous and that she has to be defensive about it. And the last thing we want to do is make them feel defensive at this time in their life. And I think that, your mom's a great storyteller. So to me, she probably usually has a story to tell around something that she's collected or something that's just hanging around. You have one Hummel. Why do you just have one Hummel?
Right.
Well, it's because when, my father went to, was in Germany, he brought it back and he gave it to me and it was very special. And so it's like, oh, there's a reason, there's a feeling
Yeah.
about this item.
Although, so my poppy was my great grandfather, her grandfather, and so she was largely raised by them. And he was a mail carrier, and prior to that, he was a chef in the army. I think it was the army.
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
And so they had German heritage. So we have this beer stein
uh-huh.
that was Poppy's beer stein. And so all my life, I'm thinking this is like some really like meaningful, valuable family heirloom. Like maybe he got it on a tour of duty when he was in the military, and like we really need to value and cherish this. So I put the beer stein out for her to put up, thinking it's like this really like valuable item. And then my mom came over and she saw it and she was like, "Oh, that thing? That's probably worth like $2. I don't know where we got that. Probably at Woolworths." Oh my God. I mean, this has been wrapped in a box in my basement for like 20 years, thinking it's something really important. And so, I mean, I guess what I'm thinking about in this moment is like, yeah, it's the story, it's the connection to Poppy. It's not like that it's
Right.
actually worth anything, right?
Yeah.
But just like that it makes us think of him, and I guess that's
Yeah.
enough. But
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a lot of things like that all of a sudden you realize actually there's not much there, but
Right.
I could
And
make that
she told
something.
you that. That
Yeah,
was kind of the interesting thing is like you ended up finding out that she was like, oh, that's not, it was just the memory that he liked to use that beer stein. It's not the beer stein,
right.
and it didn't, it's not something super special. And we might find those things out if we ask the what or the where or the who, and oh, this is just something I actually don't know why I've hung on to this, but I just have. And and so that might help cut into some of the things and highlight what is so important and the stories behind it. And then it might mean something and become something that means something to you and your sister and your families
Right.
versus something that feels like we're never going to use this third set of china. I don't even like the pattern. Like
Right.
that I always think about that when you say who gets the china, I think of, oh, what if you don't like the pattern and you feel this weird feeling about holding on to something that's not your style, you
Right.
know?
Okay, so then this brings me to this next kind of topic of like sort of kicking the can down the road, I guess is the way I would look at it of, okay, well, you can't bear to make the decision to get rid of something, to part with it. So then it becomes my challenge or opportunity to do that. And then if I can't make that decision, because I'm telling you, I've got a basement full of lots of goodies that I'm like, I can't get rid of this. It was somebody's, then it becomes our kids.
Yeah.
And I think we've talked about this, like my mom, she admits that she's got a lot of stuff, right? But her
Hmm.
feeling is like, just get a storage unit, move it in there, and then from there it can go wherever you want. Like I don't even want to know about it. Just don't make me think about it, right? She just doesn't want to deal with it. And I know there's a lot of people that are dealing with parents that have the same feeling, right? It's like, okay, this is just your problem. I can't cope. I can't deal with
Right.
it. And so I guess, like, do we just accept that? Or is there something that we can do to not have that become our problem?
Well, it's a really good question because I feel like it could be loaded depending on the situation and the parent. Um, Knowing what I know about your mother, I can say, is that a negotiable conversation? Is she would she be willing to have the conversation like, Mom, if you're willing to put this stuff in storage and not want to look at it, what first of all, what do you want to put in storage based on our the last
Nothing.
part of our conversation? Nothing,
Nothing.
right? And then but also like how, if if a parent struggles from overwhelm, or they struggle from anxiety, or they have something else going on that causes them difficulty in making those decisions, do we accept that? Do we make peace with that? Do we push back? I think it's an important thing to ask yourself, given the situation. Who are you talking about?
Right.
And what is your relationship to that person based on those kinds of things? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But I think it's hard when you look around and you think to yourself, like, your day-to-day existence, decision making, getting out the door, your life would be optimized if you didn't have to look at, this box of office supplies. Because I do think there's this difference between things that are family heirlooms that we have
Right,
emotional connection to, 100%, and then just like stuff that you think you might need, right? Like,
right,
how many rubber bands are you going to need? How many pieces of carbon paper are you going to possibly need
right,
now, right? We don't even
right,
have a typewriter to use it, but do we have carbon paper in the office? We certainly do.
right.
So it's just like, I don't know. It's like I'm overwhelmed, I guess, is the way
Absolutely.
I like. For me, it's totally overwhelming because I'm like, oh
Hmm.
my God, we've got to get rid of all this like crap that would actually be so much easier for you to do things. And then also we have all these like really valuable special things that we want to spend time sharing stories. But like there's only
Yeah,
so much time in a day, so much time in a visit, right? So
right.
I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, do you just let it go? Do you just say this is the way they want it to be and they've earned that right? Or do you try to be helpful?
I feel like there's no binary answer to that. I think it's more about saying it depends on the situation. And I do think that like when when things get to a point where they are cumbersome and they are in our parents' way or in our our relatives' way, that we have to step in and say, I have to remove some of this extraneous stuff because it is about your safety. It is about simplifying things so things aren't harder for you to, find your I was going to say address book, but truthfully,
Yeah,
they probably still have one, and so, you don't want to take it lost in these papers, or maybe it's all of our birth certificates or things like that. Like we want to get through these kinds of things. And that there are some places that you might push, especially in an office, because of what could be in between the boxes of carbon paper. That's kind of important.
right. What could be some language that I could use that would seem non-threatening to say, like, we got to clean some of this office stuff out? Like, are there kind, helpful lead-ins for these conversations?
Absolutely.
Okay.
First of all, we have to ask permission to have the conversation. So, thinking about what you want to say and how you want to turn it into some sort of brainstorming session or problem solving session with them versus telling them what you're doing. So first of all is asking, can I have a conversation with you about this? If she says no, you say, when do you think you'd be ready to have that conversation? Because this is actually important, especially in the office, because of the paperwork that's in there. And we want to like make sure we know where certain things are, and just kind of turning it into what it is. It's not just about throwing away a paperweight that has some award from 1969 on it. It's about the
You're
fact that like
spying on me while I'm there.
I
Yes,
am.
yes. I
I
feel seen. I really do feel seen.
I also cleened out my father's cottage, and that was the most amazing thing I've ever. I feel like I was in a time capsule.
Oh, how
So,
many golf awards do we need, right? How many clocks from golf tournaments that don't even have batteries in them anymore do we need? I'm going to acknowledge I don't think I've done a great job asking permission, but
yeah,
I think that's really smart and kind and simple, and just to
yeah,
say like, "Hey mom, I really feel like we need to have a conversation about um cleaning out some of the things in your office so that you have easy access to the documents that you really need." Is that
right,
something that you're willing to talk about with
yeah.
me, or can I help you with that?
Yeah. And I think that like simplifying it that way, even if it's not exactly what you want to do, what you're aiming for, you're pointing her in a direction that you're saying, this would be helpful if we
Right.
did this. And also, I think one of the things that would be also helpful, because the two of you come from very different places and your perspectives of what is necessary, I think it would be to own that, is to say, we come from different ways of organizing and keeping things. You can tell the story. This is one of my favorite early Kirsten stories. I've known you for so long. You were like, yeah, I take pictures of all the kids' art projects and I, I put them on the drive. And I was like, you throw away art projects? And you're like, yeah. But I was just like, that was so brilliant, but I just couldn't do it.
I mean, let's be clear. I do still have lots of art projects in the
I
basement.
know.
So, like I aspire to be one way and I'm only halfway there.
Halfway is much further than I am. But to your mom, it's like, oh, I mean, I think there's probably bins in her storage place in her house that
Oh,
have
yeah, we can
your art
talk.
projects in there.
Yes, we
So,
could talk about that for days
yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
So just that kind of like, and it almost introduces like difference and humor into the situation also, is to own like, Mom, I know we're different and we think differently about these kinds of things, but what we really need to do is meet in the middle. And
Right.
how can we have that
I
negotiation?
don't like that.
I know.
I don't want to meet in the middle. No, I'm teasing. I mean, you're right. Like it's true. And it's the same thing that we do in our relationship with our spouses and our
Oh yeah.
friends. And I
Yep.
guess just because it's your parents, it's different. It's fraught with things. But like
Yeah,
it's the same
because
logic. Of course, I should apply that same knowledge.
right. But at the same time, like, probably the most important thing in all of this is that I see you and I know what you want, and I'm asking you for something too. And sometimes I think about these kinds of things like, I have an older brother and he doesn't have a partner. And so sometimes I step in and I'm like a partner with him on
Hmm.
things like his will, or he went through a medical crisis last year and I was his partner around that kind of stuff. And I did ask him directly, can we work on some of these things together, like the ownership of your property, your living will, all that kind of stuff, so that I knew because it was about me. I was saying, this is really about me. We've been through the loss of two parents. We know what this is like. And if you're making me power of attorney and all these things, can we please have these conversations? And he was in a position to want to do some of those things, but not everything. And
Hmm.
so I honored some of that. And to me, it was like the 10% of the 100%. Like I got 10% of the stuff done that I would like to get done with him. And it does feel better. At least I know some of the most important things are happening. But I also know that there is a whole big road
Right.
between, between now and when he passes, so it's a big deal. But having those kinds of conversations where, and we joke about my personality versus his, and like, oh yeah, you want, the social worker's coming in and you're gonna make
Right.
everything better. She's got all the solutions. And I'm like, no, I don't have all the solutions to kind of do, but I don't, because this is your life, not mine. But
Right.
it is that kind of, it goes back to sort of, I made the joke earlier about like, the selfishness is about like, I don't want to deal with this when you're gone. Because when we start to lose these people that we love so much and they've been in our lives our whole lives and they mean so much to us and we have a lot of memories, even if some of them are hard, to have to deal with their estates at that time is really hard. And
Right.
our brains are not, firing on all cylinders. We might be clouded by grief and dismay or whatever because of however things happen. And you'd like to be doing your best self and your best work when you're helping with something like this. And I think that is as important as anything else that we're talking about.
I mean, that makes total sense. And I think I'm at a place where I can say to my parents, like, we want to. So I bought them this book. Maybe I'll find it during the pandemic when we were just trying to prepare for a lot of things, right? So there was this book called, like, So I'm Dead, Now What? And it was like a
Uh-huh.
place to just put all your papers. And I got one for my
Yeah.
husband and I, and one for them. And so thinking that it was like at least just kind of like a funny way to bring some stuff up and like maybe we could use that to put some things in. And I think I probably filled in a few pages and it's 5 years later and nothing else is really done. Now,
Right.
I'm not, I want to be clear, like my parents are in great shape and very communicative on a lot of things. So I'm not
Hmm.
trying to knock them at all in this way, but there's
No.
always something else, right? Like there just
Right.
is a lot of stuff and it's hard to bring it up because
It
it can
is.
feel so like dark and morbid and nobody wants to think about life when someone's gone, right? So I
Right.
think that's part of a lot of these conversations is
Right.
it just feels awkward.
Yes, it does. And I think that like I'm kind of we were joking about that therapist who likes to just put it all out there in the beginning and just kind of let's just break the ice by saying the hard thing
Hmm.
or the obvious thing or the truth as he called it. And I think that oftentimes that can be helpful. It just depends on how you do it, and it really is out of love and respect. And to say like, this feels so weird having a conversation with you when you're sitting here and you're vibrant and you're alive, but you're not always going to be here. And it's really hard for me to think about that. And it's
Hmm.
also hard for me to think about doing what you want me to do then. You know, is there anything we can do together now? And I've been thinking about that like all weekend as we've been coming up on doing this podcast, as I've been thinking about you and that, like, what can we do together now, together,
Right.
and make this so that you feel a peace of mind and I have a peace of mind.
Yeah, and I think as parents, they want to be helpful, right? Like
Hmm.
we all do. We want to help our
Yep.
kids. We want to do whatever's going to make their life the best, the easiest. Um, and so I think tapping into that idea is
Yep.
helpful.
Yes. Yes.
I want to see your wishes, whatever they are, get carried out.
Yes.
I want you to know that the things that are really special in our family, I will gladly take, right?
Yes.
I don't need all the things, but there's artwork, there's photographs, there are special things. And like I want to take those. And kind of what I've said to my mom too is if we don't go through this together, how am I going to know?
Right.
If this
Right.
falls to me and my sister someday later, and like I might unwittingly be getting something that really has a lot of meaning to you and giving it away in a
Right.
way that you wouldn't be happy about. I mean, that might happen anyway, but
Right.
like help me honor what matters to you
Yes.
by telling me the stories or letting me know or this doesn't matter. And I think for me it circles back to a couple of things we've talked about, which is like should something happen that somebody gets hurt or sick and you need to make a change quickly, all of a sudden you don't have that luxury of time anymore, right? You don't have
Right.
time to be like, okay, let's go through all these boxes of slides and letters and
Right.
figure out what we want to keep. It's like, oh my gosh, we need to make a cared decision or a living decision. And then you've lost that window to collaborate. And
Yes.
for me, that I don't want that. I want
No.
to be collaborative while we can be collaborative, but
Yes.
it's hard.
And I think it's something that it can be expressed and should be expressed because it's about love. It's about respect. And to show that you don't, you, nobody wants to be forced into decision making because of situations. And I was sort of thinking about, as you were talking about, like knowing that your parents are very different people. And there's things that are jointly held, and then there's things that they take care of on their own or they hold dear on their own, and it's different. And so the conversations are different. There might be a conversation you have with the two of them, and then there are conversations you have with each one of them individually because of what they hold dear and how you and the relationship that you have with them, which is really, really
Mhm.
important.
Like just looking for sort of some summary of some of the things that we can do that can be better, that you can handle these conversations and these things better is kind of really asking that permission, right? Are
Mhm.
you ready to have this kind of conversation?
Yep.
And then if they are ready, sort of approaching it with really that true honesty of this is hard for me too, right? I don't
Yeah.
want to imagine a day where you're not here to help me with this, but if we
Right.
can spend the time now going through it, we can have a shared experience together. And
Yes.
then if they're not still not ready, then you have to just kind of let it go and come back to it another time. Kind of like you were saying, like maybe be happy with that 10%, right?
Yes.
It's letting go of that expectation. And I'll say for sure, as in my role in the family and my personality type, it's like I want to get all the things on the list done.
Hmm.
I just, that's my goal. I don't always do it, but I want to. And so it's
Yeah.
circling back and just accepting, like, okay, we're going to do the 10% that really matters. And then this other 90%, maybe we break that down
Right.
and tackle it over time.
Yeah, and I would say like a couple things about what you just said is if you ask and the answer is no, you planted a seed. I always think, because you can always hold hope that like I introduced an idea and you might come to me later and say, I've been thinking about what you said. Or they might not even say that. They might just be like, so I'm ready to do this thing. I want to go through this stuff. And you're like, all right, just take it,
Hmm.
kind of thing. Also, kind of when you were just bringing up percentages, I was just thinking about how do we break things up into manageable pieces? How do you do that for yourself? And how do you do that in preparation to talking to them? Because it
Hmm.
can be just feel so overwhelming. When they told you we want to age in place and not move, it's really important that like, okay, that's a shift. Now we know what that means. And so we tackled like whatever percentage of being respectful and caring for our aging parents. You just tackled a huge chunk of it. Sure, there's a lot of different things inside of that decision, but it's the same thing with like helping you go through your things. Like, what can we work on
Hmm.
together while I'm here? And I think you kind of talked about having that experience last time. It felt like we could do that. And remember to bring the stories along and bring your phone and voice record the story that she's telling you because you're never going to hear that story again
Right.
about whatever the thing is that meant so much to her. Or the silly thing about the beer stein. That's funny.
Right. And one of the things that we talked about doing last time that we kind of agreed to was my parents, as they do, like you travel, you have art, you pick things up,
Mhm.
my dad, when they lived in New York in the 60s, like he liked to collect art. So they've got, I mean, I'm not saying like it's the Guggenheim Museum at their house, but like there's things that are important to them because they're part of their marriage, right? Like we got this thing together when we were on a trip to Italy. And so I said, like, next time I'm here, like, let's just go and like record the things. Because,
Yeah,
that would be, I know some of it, but I don't know all of it. And so
right.
like, let's take that time to just do that kind of, I didn't call it an oral history, but like, that's kind of what I'm thinking about, right?
Yeah.
And just sort of capture that so that like we have it and
Hmm.
we know and
Hmm.
we're not just looking at a bunch of pictures on a wall like who wants this,
Right.
you have that context that it can go in. And hey, if it ever has to go on Antiques Roadshow, then you've got some provenance,
That's right.
right? Because you never know when you might need that.
For
I
that
mean, I don't know
Murano
that we're
glass,
there.
for the Murano glass they picked up in Venice, and you don't realize that it was some master. Yeah, whatever.
Yes, exactly. This little piece of Murano glass is going to be worth $1 million. I mean, maybe, right? And we want to be ready for that opportunity to present
Right.
itself. So,
Right.
is there anything else that comes to you from your experience, like as a therapist dealing with families going through this? Like, are there other things that we can do to do better?
I think a couple things that come to mind is that we may want to talk about is like thinking about like back to thinking about who is your audience and who are you talking to and what do they struggle with. You know, if you have a parent that struggles with anxiety, you have to sort of bring that with you. Like, okay, we don't want to increase anxiety here. We want to make this as neutral as possible. And or if they say they're anxious, then you follow their lead around what's happening there and how can we help you while we're having these conversations. Do you instead of it just shutting down? I think that's important. because back to like seen and heard, the person wants to be seen as their whole self, even the hard stuff.
So, like the day that I got really mad at my mom when I was preparing the car full of toxic chemicals and
Yeah.
weed killer to go to the dump, and there were these like bamboo stakes for yard work, right? And I was like, "You are never going to use these. Please let me take them to the dump. They don't fit in the trash, blah, blah." And she was like, I kind of sent her into like a panic, basically. She
Yeah.
just was like, "What? Why are you getting rid of that?"
Right. Right.
And it just in the moment to me was like, this is our opportunity.
Right.
Let's just do it. But
Yeah.
in retrospect, like, does it really matter? I don't know.
Right.
No, I mean,
Right.
whatever. There's still a million other things to get rid of. So kind of like that, doing a better job reading the situation, knowing your audience, when's it too much? I think
Yes.
for me, I fail at that, right? Because I have more stamina for doing some of these things. And I think probably you even told me this too, and I've taken it to heart. It's like knowing your audience and what they're capable of and how much they can endure.
Yes.
You have to know when to stop. Like, okay, we did
Yes.
this little cabinet. Let's call it good. Let's just
Yep.
move on.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
you're getting all the toxic things to the dump. Just stick with that. Don't worry about the
Yep.
other. Like, you're
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. And our minds are so agile and we're like, oh, as long as I'm there, I could just do these things.
Yeah,
And it just, you could almost feel you're telling me the story and I'm having sort of this driveway visual of like, you're like, I'm just going to throw these in too. And her body just goes,
yeah,
No, no. Like this was a lot for me. This is what her body's saying. That was a lot for me. And can we just stop here? I can't
right,
add another thing to the pile. And knowing that you know that about your mom and knowing that like that manageable pieces. There's Colleen manageable pieces and there's my brother's manageable pieces. There's
right.
there's Kirsten, there's mom's. And so it's thinking about like what's the in between and it might not even be worth it to go there and to push that one thing like even if it's more convenient. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's like doing that last errand with your kid when you've got a 2-year-old or something. And I'm not comparing our parents to 2-year-olds. That's not what I'm doing, but it's kind of reflecting that know your audience,
Hmm.
right?
Yes. Yeah. And know like what, and you and I'm sure this is a whole nother podcast, but you and I have talked about this like when we're there and we're hanging out with them, we have to have time where we're doing fun things or we're just sitting around the sunroom and we're reading our books or we're knitting or we're just like being
Right.
together instead of it always being goal driven because those are the things that in the end, while your tasks will be done, you won't have those times anymore. I really, really relish the times when I got my mother in the car, she would argue, and then we would go down to her favorite place to walk on the beach. And I would say, let's just go. I can't walk. I'm like, that's okay. We've got your handicap placard and there's a bench. And we would just go and sit at her favorite beach and
Hmm.
listen to the waves. And she'd tell me stories about being at that beach with a friend of hers. And I was just, and when the time she walked to Monterey on the
Yeah,
beach from Santa Cruz, like that's like that we've got to figure out how to mix those things in and not just be all business when we can.
that's an opportunity for growth for us, well, at least for me. And I think for many of us, like finding that balance is really
Yeah.
tricky, but
Yeah.
worth working on.
It is because like you intimated about before or earlier in the podcast is that we don't know what events are going to occur and how things are going to unfold in their lives and in our lives. And so to be able to, while we can come together and get some things done, however much that is in the percentage, that we can also enjoy each other's company as we can.
Right. And I think for me, I've really had to let go of the frustration
Mhm.
around why won't you help yourself?
Right.
You could make certain things of your life easier by doing X, Y, or Z. And
Right.
it's frustrating to watch you struggle with like getting out the door, for instance, right? If you can't find your keys and your glasses and your phone, like we could solve for that. But if you're not ready to do it, Like it doesn't
Right.
matter. It's not going to happen. Right. So
Right.
as the child, like letting go of that for me is tough. So Colleen, some of the conversation that comes up around this is, and we are making light a little bit of it, right? Like collecting, saving, keeping,
Hmm.
holding on to things. But there is also hoarding.
Yeah.
And I think I just want to be clear for the purposes of our conversation, like that's not what I'm talking about in these instances. I think you could maybe talk for a minute about like how hoarding is different than just really being committed to your belongings that mean something to you. I just don't
Yeah.
want people to walk away thinking that we're giving advice on like if you have a hoarding situation. We're not talking about that right now.
No, no. I think that it's important to just to make a distinction between people that collect things and have collected things over years, and there's a lot of them, even if they're National Geographics from 1964. It doesn't matter. What matters is that they're collecting something specific.
Hmm.
We've joked about spoons, I just said about National Geographics, but people who have a hoarding disorder actually have a clear difficulty mentally, and it is a part of the anxiety spectrum, although it can be a disorder on its own, and it really is indiscriminately keeping and collecting things. It's not a collection of spoons. It's not being able to throw away a spoon that you got with your takeout soup, and you do that every single time you bring that soup container and that spoon home and you can't get rid of it. It's not being able to recycle items and they pile up in your house. We all know that, like, because we hear these things on TV, like some people, they call it hoarding animals, when you have too many animals to care for and things like that. That's very different than having parents that have not really gone through their things in
Right.
40 years since, or 25 years since they made a big move. Or if you're closing down a house that they've lived that you grew up in, So it's different. It's a very different situation. And if you do have someone in your life who's struggling with hoarding, I would urge you talk to an expert. If they also have depression and anxiety that is going on with their hoarding, that you talk to them gently and respectfully about that they can get help for this. It doesn't mean you're going to take anything away from them. It's going to be about how to be with what's going on.
Hmm.
And sometimes as people who are children or siblings or just someone who has a close relationship with somebody who's struggling with things like that, it's hard to conceptualize that for yourself because it's very extreme. So, but well, for our purposes, we're talking about, like I said, parents that have collections of things and have not thrown an award away from a long-standing, insurance engagement in selling insurance and have been a good salesman, like that kind of thing. It's different.
This is actually probably a pretty rich area, and people probably
Hmm.
experience things along a broad spectrum. So
Yeah,
I think, yeah, maybe let's kind of come back to that in a future episode so we could give people some guidance as to how to identify what might be going on and then how to get the right help to cope with whatever's going on.
absolutely,
Who gets the
absolutely.
goods?
And I think that it's like one of those things, like what's manageable, and if it feels at all unmanageable, if it's outside your window of being able to manage things, then you seek help. And we can talk about how to figure out what that is at another time. Absolutely.
So something we've talked about with our parents, because a lot, obviously I'm 56, right? Like I'm talking to a lot of women of my general age, my
Hmm.
generation. And so we have parents who, in many cases, grew up in similar generations, right?
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of shared experience in that. Like we talked about the greatest generation, they've either survived a war or a parent who was at war or a parent who lived through the depression. And so
Hmm.
I think that colors the way that you see your things.
Yes.
Um, and I think we don't always understand or appreciate it, right? Like, talk a little bit about putting that in perspective for us as we try to help our parents simplify and downsize, what should we be mindful of as the kids?
I think that number one, it's about really having an appreciation for that perspective is to, as generations age and, I happen to have older parents. And so, I was born when they were in their late 30s. So, they were part of the Great Generation. And for those people who still have people alive in that generation, is that there was a great sense of accomplishment. They came from a very patriotic era in our country's lifetime. They were afforded things like education in ways that they were not, like, 10 years before World War II. Somebody of my father's sort of working class stature could not have gone to college, and he
Hmm.
went to college. And so he still worked really hard despite the fact that he had a 4-year degree from a very prestigious institution. So, and everything he attained was really important to him, and the stories that went along with it and the ways that he went about it. um, and some of those things were acquiring cars or a cottage or a boat, or having camera equipment. My father was a big collector of camera equipment. And so, to appreciate that that was a way that he got to open his life differently than the generation before him, and even differently than his siblings, because like
Mm.
he was a well-educated person, where his brother, who did really well for himself, owned a small trash company. So it's sort of like my father was super cultured, and his brother was like still just kind of a working class Joe. And so
Hmm.
there's just kind of this different appreciation for what was achieved. And I think it kind of goes back to that, like the stories are important, and how dear that is. I think that's also the point, is like if you're coming from a little bit of a deficit mentality, then you feel like this is a very big deal. And everything we did here is a big deal. The
Right.
trips we took, the fact that we had a camper. It was a really big deal that we had a camper when I was growing up. And so, and that we got to take these car camping trips, and my father would take a week off of work. That was a big deal. Getting in the mind of his perspective about how important it was to be able to take his kids camping and being outside was important to him.
Right.
And so, because he didn't have that as a kid. And I think those are the
That makes a
places.
difference. Well, and I think too, like my mom talks about, like I said, she was really raised by her grandparents who did live through the Depression. And, they had plastic covering on all of their furniture, right?
Yes.
Like that,
Yes.
just people had it because you were going to buy one couch, you were going to have that
Yep.
couch your whole life. And, sometimes I'll say to my mom, like, oh my God, why are you saving this thing? I don't know. It's like a tube of cream that there's one use left or whatever, and she's like, well,
Right.
there's plenty of cream in there. I'm like, oh my God, it's empty. Just throw it out. And she's like, well, no, I can use that last bit. But she'll say, like, well, I grew up, I have a depression mentality. And
Right.
I kind of say to myself, well, no, you don't, because you were born like more than 20 years after the depression was over. But
Right.
I think what you're saying is like that's a part of the fabric of their childhood because
Yes.
their parents may have gone through that. And so,
Yes.
or they may be the first child to go to college. They might be
Yes.
recent immigrants, right? Like,
Right.
so they may
Right.
have a very different backstory. That's why so many of these things that to us don't seem that worth holding on to, it's worth it for them because it represents something symbolic or actual that they've
Yes.
achieved
Yes.
or their parents
Absolutely.
did. Yeah,
Absolutely. And to not take things for granted. Like
right.
that if you actually have achieved something and you have something that you either a story to tell or an item that's important to you, it's the fact that you earned it, and you keep a legacy going. And that's those kinds of things are important too. That's a whole nother topic, is what is a legacy, and what kind of legacies, like kind of back to your mom, is like, what is she carrying that she wants to be carried forth. These are really
Right.
important things,
And so, I
especially as
mean,
women.
yeah, and I could totally get behind all that and I respect all that and I can have all that theoretical understanding and I can do better with verbalizing it. But then also, it's like, why are we holding on to 8 digital cameras from the 80s and the 90s and the aughts or whatever? Like, why? It's like for me, it's both, right? It's respecting the legacy, the story, and appreciating that, which I
Yeah.
100% do. But then
Right.
also trying to say, like, okay, just let go of what's not serving you anymore.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and sometimes I don't understand it.
Well, and also I think kind of the idea of like going to what is, kind of just going to the left brain and saying, we can't even see what's on this anymore. We can't take advantage of because the technology has changed so much. We can't even appreciate what's happening here. Like, and it's just like that's plain. Sometimes we just have to pull out plain and simple language about things like we can't even
Okay, that
use
does not
this.
work. My
I know,
mom has
not
an
with your
AM
mom.
FM Walkman. Like, mom, I don't, do you even, where are you walking with an AM FM Walkman? Like, I don't even know if it gets any stations in. Yeah, and I have to come clean. I do have a VHS player in my basement that I did borrow from my sister so that we could watch some old VHS tapes. So, I mean, I'm not trying to paint a picture that like I'm normal and great about getting rid of stuff. I agree. And I think what I like the higher thinking of
Yeah.
saying, let's respect where they've come from and
Yes.
where all the things came from.
Yes.
So I am a 100% on board and I can do better with that for sure. And then
Yes.
also, how do I just get through some of the stuff? Like, I mean, when my mom sees me going from the cabinet towards the garage, like she'll literally be like, "Don't put that in the trash. Don't put that in the trash." Like, and I know I can't because she will go inspect the trash to see what
Oh
I
yeah,
have thrown
because
into the trash.
she is a
So
trash hawk.
she's a trash hawk. I need to get a t-shirt. I'm a trash hawk. I think she would be proud of that, actually. She would value that commentary.
So what I think is important also is that anytime we're trying to work with somebody around a situation of helping them simplify their lives, is you got to have like you got to have a handful of cards, right? It's like you've got 5 cards, and one of those cards sometimes has to be, this just doesn't work anymore, and we
Hmm.
have to get rid of it. And it's sort of like, but if we can't use that, can't be the only card, the only tool. But it has to be available sometimes because that camera doesn't work anymore, or, and that's important. We can say that sometimes. Don't forget that it's like, it's not all going to be massaged conversation. Sometimes it's like, yeah, Dad, nobody uses that anymore, and there's no way to access the information on it. It's
Right.
really a shame, and we have to let it go.
For me, there is so much content in this topic of
Yeah.
how to help your parents optimize their life and their living situation, right? For me, it's really
Hmm.
coming from this place of I love them. I want them to be
Hmm.
happy in their house as long as they can. I want them to be safe in their house as long as they can. I also want to minimize the negative impact to me and my sister, being totally
Yeah.
honest. So I
Yep.
think like I really appreciate this conversation for helping give some tools and some language and some perspective on what it is we're really dealing with so that maybe we can find some entry points in to help facilitate this process. Are there any sort of parting words that you want to say before we wrap it up?
I would just reiterate a couple things, which is one is inviting a conversation, and accepting their time frame around conversation, because conversation is the first part. So if we're going to have a conversation with our parents, think about what we want to say, what we want to tackle. Don't forget to put things into manageable pieces for them, not you, because we're talking about somebody who's older and has a different sensibility around things, and try to appreciate their perspective before you go into the conversation. Um, I would also consider, help brainstorm with them and consider what they would like to work on, and how they'd like to do it. Given the last thing that we just talked about, I would also say, like, how much of this do you want to do with me? And how
Mhm.
much of this don't you want to do? and that's kind of a brass tacks conversation about things. Um, and do we want to start small? Do we want to start big? Just making it simple, you know. This is very hard. And remembering that they're coming from a perspective, these are memories. We want to have good experiences with them around things like this. So invite storytelling as much as possible,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
that's really the piece that they want to connect with, is the part of what this means to them, and whether it's an accomplishment or something they've always wanted, or just because they could have it and they liked it, you
Yeah, and
know?
honestly, that's the fun part, right? Like when we were home last time, we couldn't find the Vietnam letters that we were looking for, but we found my
Oh,
dad's
yeah.
yearbooks. So
Yeah.
my dad was like spending all this time with my daughter, sitting on the couch laughing about yearbooks and going through, whatever, just these funny stories we all have about girlfriends or that kid and what they did at the basketball
Right.
game, and so
Right.
those moments of connection are really what matter at the end. And
Yep.
so
Yep.
finding those opportunities is more important than cleaning out the garage.
That's right. And don't forget to voice record things. It's really important, or videotape
Yeah.
conversations. Really, really important. You'll be so glad you did.
Well, I appreciate you helping us have a good, funny, and honest conversation about navigating life with our aging parents. And I know it's going to be the first of many. We've got lots of great topics.
We
And
do.
just also, I think a reminder for people that if it gets to be too much for you or you feel like you're not having success, a therapist is always a great resource, no matter your
Yes.
age, no matter where you are in your journey. But finding some professional help that's not as close to it as you are can help you get
Yes.
some distance and some perspective. So thank you for
Yes.
kind of bringing that to us today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime.
All
It
right.
was my pleasure.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Who Gets the China is written and hosted by Kirsten Mao, produced by Aaron Bryce of Blue Ogden Productions. Our theme music is composed by Greg Fellman of Wind Sand Productions. Our cover art is by Jen Beam of Gigawatt Studio. For more stories and expert advice, follow along on Substack or at www.whogetsthechina.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who might appreciate the conversation. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time.